Olympics, There's No Joy in Beijing as Sydney Gets Olympics. By Patrick E. Tyler. Published September 24, 1993, Beijing, Friday, September 24. In an enormous case of mistaken identity, millions of Chinese this morning thought that Beijing had won the competition to hold the 2000 Olympic Games, setting off a citywide celebration of fireworks and cheers that collapsed in disappointment minutes later. On the campus of Beijing University, about 400 students had gathered in Dining Hall No. 3 to watch the televised announcement, which came just before 2:30 a.m. A celebration erupted as Juan Antonio Samaranch, president of the International Olympic Committee, in thanking the 5 contestants, uttered Beijing before any other city's name. The same unbridled joy occurred at Beijing's Central Television Station Auditorium, where the official televised celebration was to be held. As Samaranch began to speak from Monte Carlo, Monaco, the Beijing auditorium suddenly exploded with cheers. Confetti flooded from the rafters, only to be followed by a wave of despair a few minutes later when images from Sydney, Australia, the victorious entry, flashed across giant television screens. Faces fell and jaws dropped as fast as the bunting. Many in Beijing had convinced themselves over the final days that their front-running bid would win, and they were devastated. When the confusion cleared in China, the government's propaganda machinery clicked into action when an official broadcaster appeared on national television channels and read a pre-recorded editorial in which China faced its loss. "We respect the Olympic Committee's decision and congratulate Sydney on its success," the statement said, and went on to promise that the competition had deepened the country's commitment to economic reform and to the Olympic movement. China vowed to put its efforts into competing at Sydney and playing host to the 2004 Games. The decision represented a significant blow to the Communist Party leadership, which mounted the most vigorous campaign of any nation to win the competition. China's bid had become an urgent political priority this year at a time when the country's economy has surged to world prominence and Communist Party leaders are seeking to validate China's return to the international stage after more than 4 years of isolation stemming from the June 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown that crushed a student-led democracy movement. Bitter disappointment and a sense of rejection was palpable in the city and in the faces of Olympic supporters who had gathered at hotels and meeting halls. "When I saw the Australians waving their arms, I felt so shameful," said a member of China's National Sports Committee attending an announcement party at a northeast Beijing hotel. "I'm Chinese. That's not what I was waiting for." "There were no winners in the bidding," said Yang Tianl, a medical official on the national sports team. "There is only the lucky one." In a message to the Chinese delegation in Monte Carlo, Li Taiying, a Chinese Politburo member, said, "There were many reasons why China did not win the right to hold the 2000 Olympics, but this doesn't mean that China does not have the strength and the conditions to hold an Olympics." He continued, "Applying for the Olympics is an important step in our country's process of reform and opening up. Although we did not win the right to hold the 2000 Olympics, through our steady work, we achieved very big results." Although its official statement sought to take the high road, a strain of deep resentment, especially toward the United States and other Western nations that had cited China's poor human rights record as a disqualifying factor, was present here today. During the afternoon, rumors circulated at Beijing University that students were planning to march on the United States Embassy if Beijing's bid failed. But that seemed a remote possibility. In recent days, Chinese security officials have warned residents of Beijing to take the news from Monte Carlo calmly and to stay off the streets no matter what the decision. During the day and into the evening, university authorities exercised tight control over the heavily policed campus and minutes after the television announcement was concluded, students were asked to return to their dorms and go to sleep. Beijing's problems. A Beijing University graduate student in political science, Zhang Han, said, "I personally don't mind that Beijing was not accepted, and I agree that Beijing has a lot of problems and this is one way to recognize those problems. Among the problems, he said, are the city's air pollution and overcrowded streets and mass transit systems. Another male undergraduate student, who declined to give his name, said, "I am very angry." He added that the decision wasn't fair and that it was politically motivated. One Beijing University student, trying to put the best face on things, said he did not feel like staying up to hear any of the morale-building speeches that filled state television for an hour after the announcement. "We are just going back to sleep and dream about 2004, he said. Beijing opponent pleased. Washington, September 23. Special to the New York Times. Representative Tom Lantis, Democrat of California, who led the fight in Congress against Beijing's bid to hold the Olympics in the year 2000, said he was overjoyed by the decision. Lantis, a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, wrote the resolution adopted by the House of Representatives in July urging the United States representative on the International Olympic Committee to vote against Beijing's bid. "I can't tell you how delighted I am," Lantis said, "that my resolution played a role in persuading the Olympic Committee that human rights and decency must prevail in a society before they have the privilege of hosting the Olympics." Senator Bill Bradley, who wrote letters to the IOC, urging it not to give China the honor, said in a written statement, "This is a good day for those who are struggling for freedom in China and a proud day for the Olympic movement." Bradley, a New Jersey Democrat, continued, "With this vote, the International Olympic Committee has stated that human rights considerations have a rightful place in the Olympic Games. This vote should advance the cause of human rights in China." Fireworks time, mate. Sydney, Australia, Friday, September 24, AP. Fireworks boomed and champagne flowed today as an ecstatic Sydney celebrated its victorious bid to hold the 2000 Olympic Games. An estimated 100,000 people flocked to Circular Quay on Sydney Harbour where the first European settlers set foot on Australian soil 205 years ago. They shouted in joy as they watched the announcement from Monte Carlo, Monaco, on giant television screens 2 hours before dawn. Tens of thousands were still dancing in the streets after the sun rose. Drivers honked their horns continuously in downtown streets choked with traffic. The harbour was full of sailboats and other pleasure craft. Sydney is Australia's oldest and most populous city with a population of 3.7 million people out of a nation of 17.8 million. The country's strongest Olympic showing, 13 gold medals, came the last time it provided the host city, at the 1956 Melbourne Games.